Welcome everybody to our first CommuniTEAs event this semester with the Lewis Honors College. I'm Dr. Zeta Kamara. I teach here in Honors, and I'm going to introduce the CommuniTEAs series. I'm going to introduce our guest, the amazing Soreyda Benedit-Begley, and then we'll do our scheduled conversation. But first, just to make a logistical announcement, I want to address the weather. You may notice that the situation outside is befitting of a science fiction climate disaster film about the frozen apocalypse. And I'm hosting this event. Dr. Tuttle is the co-host. If I lose power, I'm going to try to run this event on natural daylight in this little UK MiFi hotspot. So if that happens, just give me a minute to boot up and hop back on. If Soreyda loses power, we'll reschedule unless we're near the end and we're on the Q&A portion. And this event is currently streaming to at least my Facebook Live, perhaps the Honors College Facebook Live. I'm not 100% certain, but we are recording it and it will be up on the Honors College Facebook later, so you can watch the rest later if you lose power. So to introduce CommuniTEAs, it is an ongoing series hosted by the Lewis Honors College Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Council. And the purpose of this series is to provide an intimate setting for guests from across the UK and Lexington to share research and passion with the Honors College and our guests. And we really aim to highlight individuals who are change makers in their field and whose work showcases concepts that are powerful and intersectional. And these are conversational style gatherings. They encourage faculty and students and staff and community members to join in the discussion and explore ideas that generate some really thought-provoking conversations and help connect our students with important people across the community and the Commonwealth. And we actually used to have cookies and tea together, but COVID. So we'll just, cheers from our respective houses. Dr. Falstick, thank you. And someday we'll have tea together again. And the structure of these is an interview followed by a very chill Q&A. So after I ask Soreyda some questions, we'll open the floor and feel free to unmute and ask questions directly, or you can use the chat function. So a bit about Soreyda. I met Soreyda almost 10 years ago after I met her husband, Chris, who you may have seen in the background moving all of his books for this event. He's a fellow archaeologist who teaches at Transy, and he was telling me all about his research, studying giant ancient indigenous ring cities in Amazonia, and he was doing underwater archaeology all over the world. And I remember saying to him, you're kind of a badass. And he said, and I quote, "I'm nothing compared to my wife. I can't wait for you to meet her." And these truer words, Chris, truer words. I went to their house for dinner shortly after, and Soreyda was in the midst of finishing sewing a black, full-skirted couture gown with like a tutu skirt with a beautiful corset and a flare, and the flared skirt was made, in my memory, entirely of potato chip bags. And it was gorgeous and it was strange. And she told me about this project, which was meant to draw attention to consumer waste and to rethink creative reuse. And she told me that as a child in Honduras, she and her siblings designed clothes and shoes out of whatever found objects were around. And as an impoverished kid myself, I really deeply identified with this creative exercise in toy making. Soreyda is an uncommon artist and a rogue applied scholar of the human condition. She is truly a powerhouse. She is a fashion designer, she's a seamstress, an activist, a radio talk show personality, a writer, and the mother of the century, in my opinion. She's originally from the Mosquito Coast region of Honduras, where she worked in the commercial garment industry. Soreyda moved to Kentucky with Chris a bit over 20 years ago and set about sewing and designing for a cause. She founded and directed the Lexington Fashion Collaborative, a 501c dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion in fashion and promoting the work of local designers, especially beginning designers and designers of color. Her work is award-winning and has been shown in Kentucky, New York, Atlanta, and Chicago, among other places. She also did a really amazing fashion show in 2019 for the College of Arts and Sciences Year of Migration Programming, in which several of our Lewis Honors College students walked the runway. And this is where I really learned more about Soreyda's Garifuna heritage and her work connecting race and fashion, and also that one can make a high-low couture ball gown out of a blue plastic tarp. It was truly an amazing show. So Soreyda, welcome. How are you doing on this icy day?
I'm inside and warm, so I'm winning today. We haven't lost power, and I'm sorry for other people who have, but we've been lucky, and so far so good. Like you say, it can happen in any minute. So Thank you for that lovely introduction. Like, wow,
Thank you so
I
much
miss
for
that
being
person.
here. I mean, I'm such a huge fan of your work, and I think a lot of us who have had exposure to your work can't help but be big fans. And really, thank you so much for being with us today. Um, as an oral historian, my favorite opener for things is always asking folks to tell me a little bit about themselves. And I would love for you to tell us about your life journey that led you here to your present work with fashion and activism.
Um, you told quite, part of it. I started in Honduras, always been very creative, love making things, always tried to keep my hands busy. And when I was 13, I entered Sewing Academy. At that time, or at the point of my life, I had no idea that such a thing as a fashion industry existed. I was never exposed to it, never read about it or anything. I just love making things, but I wanted to learn how to construct garments and advance my knowledge in the industry. And I went and studied for a year. These academies are sewing academies are very common in Honduras, because the industry at the time was very strong in Honduras, and the late 90s, uh, late 80s, early 90s. That sounds so long ago. And 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 so I went and studied, and then for a year, and then I went back in to regular school. But when I was 14 is when I started working in the factories, known as sweatshops. They're very common in Honduras, and most of the friends that I had, everybody wanted to go work there because it was accessible, and the pay was decent compared to other jobs that were available to people like myself. We worked long hours during the vacation time, when we were in school, 7 days a week, 14, 16 hours a day, and we earned average $30 for all that. But that's what everybody did, so it was not a big deal. But after I moved here, after I met Chris and moved to the States, and he invited me to come talk to one of his classes, is when I started doing research and find out the marginal profits that the companies, that distribute these items make. And I was pretty upset, and I'm still pretty upset actually, and decided that I want to get involved. And so I started by joining the board of the Central Kentucky Council for Peace and Justice. It's an organization here in Lexington that works in issues of peace and justice. And a friend of mine, Rosie Musnick, actually is the one who invited me. She's a professor at UK as well. And I learned a lot. I was focused on issues of fair trade and distribute material from Oxfam, which is an organization that works mainly in agriculture, but overall international trade. And so I learned a lot from them as well. And eventually went into doing more creative work and trying to create awareness through that, because one thing that I realized as I was doing a lot of the talks and participating in events with the council is that even though we're wonderful people, you often just come across the same people every time you go to any event related to these issues. And so it's like, well, me with my creativity is like, how can I reach a larger demographic, different type of people who might otherwise will never get exposed to this side of the industry, because people are attracted to going to see fashion shows. I mean, who doesn't want to go see a fashion show? They're fun, they're entertaining, they're glamorous. But within that, I managed to also introduce information of the reality of the industry, just little by little, not to knock people out of it and totally remove the fantasy that is around, because yeah, art, fashion is fantasy, is things that we create to entertain ourselves, that we don't need all those shoes, right? But it's fun, and we want those things, and we want beauty in our lives. And so I still try to bring the entertainment, but at the same time, put a little bit of the reality pill within the whole um, show, and that way, more people get educated. So that's how I got involved with the local fashion industry. We formed the Lexington Fashion Collaborative with many talented artists, and I came to realize too that there were so many people here that were eager to be involved and participate, but because of the circumstances of the industry, they weren't allowed to. So yeah, and I've been at it for 17 years then since first started. Yeah.
I mean, you have such an awesome and interesting story, and I really like how much of your identity that you have brought into all of your work. And we told our students in Lewis that you just did a great speaking event for the College of Arts and Sciences about the implications of fast fashion and all of the exploitation that's entangled in the global, global fashion commodity chains. And this event, by the way, folks, is available online. And if Dr. Tuttle can find it, maybe we can post it in the chat. So along those lines, and one of my favorite pieces that you've written about the fashion industry, you said, I can't look at a $5 t-shirt on sale in H&M without thinking about the hands that made it and the time it took to stitch the fabric, that there's simply no way to manufacture a t-shirt for $5 without exploiting someone. And I love that piece of writing. And I won't ask you to duplicate your amazing A&S presentation, but I would like to ask, what makes your own work different? What makes it activist?
My artistic work, my pieces, you mean, like the physical items? Um, the reality is I do a lot of my work because I like to do it. I don't have a intention of making it as a commercial item. Like if somebody wants to buy it, that's great. But I make my living as a seamstress. So people just tell me to sew stuff for them and I sew it. Like right now, I do finishing for a local company of suits. That's what I do. It's repetitive work, but I get paid for it. And I also do a small production for another local brand. And so that's not very creative work, but that's what I got to do. So when I do the things that are in shows, are just my creativity. I wanted to make them for entertainment of the general public, and I love to see people's faces when they see some of the random things that I make. um I just enjoy it. It is very therapeutical for me. It takes me away from the harshness of the industry, everyday life. And um yeah, that's my inspiration, is to create something that is beautiful, and also try to be resourceful, show other artists, other young designers, that you can still create, and there is plenty of material available to be able to use, that you don't have to think that because you can go to Mood in New York and buy the expensive luxurious fabrics, you cannot create items. And also to think of the industry as a creative outlet, that it's been commercialized so much that we don't even think about it as an art form. And it's a creative outlet. As humans, we always wanted to create things that uh, they're not technically necessary, but they're necessary because that's the items that bring us happiness. So yeah, that's kind of like my story behind what I do.
I love that answer. Not not technically necessary, but necessary should be like our new tagline for the arts because it's so necessary. And I really like you talking about the materials aspect of it. I'm always interested as a material culture scholar, how people use what they use and why they do. And I had caught your interview with Tom Martin on Eastern Standard about your work on sustainability and the hemp industry, one of Kentucky's historic cash crops. And I wondered if you would talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, like within doing research, I came across hemp and the history of hemp in Kentucky, the how it used to be such a important crop. Like, Henry Clay was one of the huge um, um, like people behind the industry and supporting it and making sure that there was legislation that helped the industry thrive in here in Kentucky. So a lot of the wealth that was built and here in Kentucky come from hemp. And in the 1930s is when became illegal because the marijuana bill that want to make it illegal, and because it's the same species, the similarities of they were afraid that people will start will grow the illegal form, and it would be hard for the law enforcement to identify which one was which. And so just let's make it illegal. But I think there were some other economical interests behind that, because it happened just a few years before um, the mass production of synthetic fabrics was made possible. So that's another story. And so I was doing research, and then hemp was starting to be pushed to become legal and to be grown again in Kentucky and all around the country. And it is one of the most sustainable fibers and doesn't need a lot of pesticides to grow. And the plant itself has so many uses. It's called the magical plant because you can eat it, you can wear it, you can build houses with it, you can really do pretty much anything. And so I started promoting hemp among the designers. It's not very available. It's very scarce. It's impossible really to buy it directly here. No stores carries it. So you have to order online. So I order samples from different companies and start letting my friends borrow them so they can order them, because the package of samples is not super cheap. And so, I've been doing that, just trying to promote among the designers and to get people to see what it looks like, because people still have this concept of him being like a burlap sack, that is rough and everything. And really, they have gotten technology to process the fiber that is so soft, just pretty much almost like cotton now. And so there is that possibility of bringing back hemp and creating a sustainable industry where every aspect of it is sustainable and good for people, because just considering the fact that you don't have pesticides on your clothes is such a big deal.
That's just so awesome. I can't wait to see what you're gonna make. And kind of along those lines, like what else is in the future for you as a fashion designer and or an activist?
Well, I will continue to create forever and ever, definitely pushing the industry here. I was in the middle of putting together, almost at the end of putting together this big fashion show when COVID hit, and that was really a huge setback for me. It was really almost traumatic, because after, a couple of years of working on getting it together, and we had to postpone it 2 days before it happened. And so we're just waiting. I just sent out an email to everybody yesterday that I have decided to move it to 2022, because just right now it's so hard to predict what's going to happen or where we're going to be by the fall. And also because the show has so many different elements of art in it, including several performances. There's 7 dance studios that were going to perform. They're going to perform in the show, and people haven't gotten the chance to rehearse. And so it's just like we need time to do that and wait it, what happened with the pandemic. And I'm going back to school. I never attended college, so I'm gonna go start in May at the Bugos Community Technical College here in Lexington, which I'm super excited about it. I wanted to do it before, but we have 3 kids, and it's kind of waited out until they're older enough, and 2 of them are gonna be in college in the fall, and so I'm gonna start that, and I want to study political science and economics because I'm a political junkie. If you follow me on Facebook, you might notice that. And so I wanted to be able to create a broader impact in the industry, because definitely policy is extremely important. It can impact the industry almost more than any show that I can do, but I still would be doing the shows because it's fun. But I also will do politics because it's powerful.
Well, you have my vote for any local election. That goes unsaid. And congratulations,
Thank
congratulations
you.
for going to school. That's awesome. So, speaking of school and students, we like to ask folks, what recommendations would you make for our students to learn more about what you do? So, like for your work specifically, activism in fashion, and now the politics of fashion.
Well, I always doing things around, just get involved, send me a text message, my phone, my email, everything is up there available. You can look me up on Instagram or Twitter or um, Facebook mostly. I even got a TikTok now. My kids make me do it. And contact me. I'm very approachable. Just send me an email. Try to keep up with emails constantly. I have two people that I'm mentoring right now, so I'm a bit busy with that. But I usually try to have, one person at the time. But because COVID, it makes it a little bit easier to be able to work with several people. And yeah, any questions or suggestions, whatever part of the industry that you're interested on, I'm able to help sometimes or refer somebody else. There are a couple of people that I saw they're part of this chat today. Laverne Savieski is a wonderful textile artist and writer, and Kathy Vigor also is a phenomenal local artist. So there are plenty of people here with great knowledge of the fashion industry, extremely talented. So we do have all the talent that we need here to create a very strong industry. It's about getting everybody together and getting resources and getting the policies to support local manufacturing and local artists. Yeah, that's what I'm going for. But contact me.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll make sure that there's a link to your website when we put this event online, because I would like students to be able to reach out to you.
Yeah.
I'll ask one more question before our Q&A period that we started adding to communities during the pandemic. Our dean, Dr. Laura Bryan, who's a positive psychologist and in the Zoom here with us today, she's always prompting us to share joyful things because it gives everyone's mood a boost. And this really works. We do it in faculty meetings, and we all need this after 2020. And so I'll ask you, what's bringing you joy during the pandemic?
Well, all the time that I'm able to have with the family, honestly, like it's been really great because our kids are the entire lives. It's like we're going here, we're going there. It's constantly go, go, go. And we do a lot of things together, but just to be able to be together doing nothing is actually pretty great. And so that's been really good. And our daughter went to college for a couple of months, but then she came back because they got a break of COVID, and she's been here, and we're just here, just chilling. Everybody's doing their schoolwork, and so that's been very joyful. It's just doing almost nothing sometimes.
Well, I particularly like videos of your rabbit destroying things on your Facebook. So I'll say that your rabbit brings me joy.
Yeah, we do have destructive rabbits. We cannot let the doors of the bedroom where they stay open. If they come up here, really like within seconds, stuff gets destroyed. It's like, how can they be so fast? But they're really cute. We have two. One is called, his name is Dog, and the other one's Kiwi. We also have chickens in the backyard, and we have a turtle, and we have leopard gecko. So we do have a few creatures in here living with us too.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I won't take up any more time with my questions. I want all of our guests to be able to ask. So I will open the floor. Please feel free to unmute and ask Soreyda directly, or we can use the chat function on the side and do it that way.
Cool. Oh, I see Mercedes. Hi, Meche.
Hey, Soreyda.
Hi, Laverne.
Hi, Soreyda.
I want to know how we are going to do two things. One is to bust, so to speak, the whole issue between art and fashion. I mean, it's like, it's very creative making art, but when we say fashion, it's almost like a four-letter word. It's almost like, well, I'm not into fashion, And when we say art, well, then there's a whole high level perceived. And when we try to get money from arts organization and we say fashion, well, then they just see that as business and just something for everybody. And so they don't want to give us the money for the art. And when we go to businesses, then they can't figure out how to integrate art because it's expensive into their business plans. So I think your vision of having, you know, like a boutique or something where we would be able to have all the amazing creative art, fashion that's made in Lexington for sale. How are we going to get the business people and the arts people together to try to make this happen?
You always bring out the toughest questions, Laverne, and that's great. That's really great, and that's something that we talk about a lot. I honestly feel like at this point in time that we have the biggest chances to really flip things around and change how we perceive what is important and what is valuable. It definitely felt that we were living in such a fast pace before the pandemic. It's not like we have slowed down a whole lot. It's still, you know, commerce is going, people are going to places and doing things, but we can definitely present the idea that we need to focus on doing things that are meaningful, that are valuable, and not just economically speaking. It's not just necessarily about how much you can sell it for, but things that can bring us joy, can bring us together, they are sustainable, because having this system of fast manufacturing and fast fashion, it is not sustainable at all. You can have so much items and then you have people who are not even able to purchase them, and then you have this overproduction. Where is this stuff going? So just definitely getting people to be involved, to understand the importance of having a voice, and just pushing through all the noises and getting to the people that really can push for change, um, and not be afraid of fashion. Because the way that I think the fashion got to be so scary is because the way it was promoted, or the way that the advertising campaigns were set. They were set in a way that it touched into people's insecurities and make them feel inferior at time. And so the only way that you can be part of, you know, all these worlds, you buy these things, buy. And if you are not confident with, you know, the way that you look, and the industry just push it farther, so to make you feel like you had to buy these things so you can prove your confidence. It's like, not really. What you need is to, you know, be part of something bigger than yourself, have support in your community, understand that you're not alone, understand that there are things that are valuable that you don't have to buy. So just changing how we consume, because you know, we consume not just items that we buy, but through our eyes and through our ears. Yeah, that's my hope, honestly, that we can start being more thoughtful of what we want in our lives and around us overall.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm romantic to some degree, I guess, but I don't know. I don't know if anybody else has some other ideas. Maybe you can also share some of your ideas, Laverne. You've been in this business for so long, and I know you have some amazing insights, and you have seen it all almost. And so you have even more experience than what I have, especially here, because I come from a total different background, from a different perspective. I come from, you know, a place where I was little, a place where everything was done in community, and you put value on people, you put value on nature. And so I'm very attached to those ideals, but I know that there's a different reality that we had to work with, and that, you know, that is what it is. And so what can we do to be able to push through that?
Well, I think you keep doing what you're doing is one way.
I'll try my best. And thank you for always being so supportive. I really appreciate you. Let's see. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yes.
I know that the industry of fast fashion is absolutely terrible. How can we combat that ourselves on a person-by-person basis if we're not yet part of the sewing community?
Well, you can be a supporter, like, whatever there is, a friend who sews on Facebook, cheer them up. That really makes a difference. Giving a like, sharing what they're doing, just being able to stay in the industry is an achievement for me. Like, people sometimes who say, oh, you can go to New York or you can go to LA and you can make a lot of money, you can be famous and all that. And it's like, yeah, that sounds better than what really is, because this is a very tough industry for people who have any even a bit of a really high moral standards. It's very tough because the industry pushes to make things as cheap as possible, and otherwise it's so hard to survive. And so sometimes people who are at the small or medium level in the industry are forced to just go with what the standards on the industry are, because you have these major companies who basically control the market at the high level. And so if we can have more people staying in the industry, we can build a strong industry with high standards. And also when you buy items, if you can put quality over quantity, having a lot of things that can make it easier, definitely, to having options, but having things that you really love and have a story for and understand where they came from and who are they connected to, just make it extra special. So be mindful about the way you shop, and you can even buy vintage or repurposed items. That way you just not buying into this system of mass production, of overproduction that we have right now. I don't know, I think that can help. Let's see, look on the other way. Anybody else? Any other questions? In this.
Well, I'll ask another one. I'm always interested in people's inspiration for what they make, and I have seen you make everything from just like the most classic wedding dress to like literally a dress made out of a blue tarp and everything in between. And I'm always interested how you come up with these ideas.
Oh, well, when I see something, just can imagine how can be manipulated into something different. I not always see things for what they are at the moment, but what they could be or what they could become. And I think I might do the same thing with people, that I always try to get to know them as much as possible and understand them and make attachments with them. And sometimes that's how I perceive the material things around me too, that this is what it is right now, but it could be this. And usually in my mind, things just go into wearables. Like those are the shapes that I imagine they can happen with those items that I see around. And very often the ideas come up from the materials. Like I don't have necessarily the idea before I see the material, but when I see these things and I'm like, you can't just throw this away, I feel so guilty. And so sometimes I do accumulate too much stuff because I'm planning on eventually doing something with it. And so, and then just like, oh my gosh, I need to really just, control myself, because there's so much material of there, so much packaging. It is unreal, the amount of material that you can accumulate so easily. But yeah, just trying to be resourceful, and it just depends also on what's happening, like what's the theme of the event. If I have a project that I feel like a certain material would be fitting for it. Like when I did this window display at the Downtown Art Center for the holidays last year, it just what the occasion was and the materials that I have to work with, you know, they were fitting, and so I use that. It just depends on what's going on, what's the theme. I just go with it.
So Soreyda, Sally asked a question in chat about what your favorite piece is that you designed and why. And I want to add on to that favorite piece. Do you have a hard time letting go of your favorite pieces?
I do. And I usually don't let them go. What happened, I would just make it into something else. So I have things that I have transformed several times. I will add something to it, remove something to it, you know, make them shorter, or then add another fabric or another material in the bottom. So I constantly just changing things around. But some pieces that I have made for clients that I get attached to that I really like, it happens every now and then when I work with people who are very creative and they wanted to do something that is unique, and we really sync, because that's another thing with my work. If I do costume work, it's not always so easy to just make things, because I wanted to be connected with the people that I'm working with, and that really makes a big difference on the outcome. And it's very challenging because you just don't want to have to be picky, you know, because it is a tough industry, but at the same time it's like I wanted to be working with, you know, certain people that I'm comfortable with. But my favorite pieces that I have made in the past few years, I definitely love my daughter's quinceañera dress, because there were so many people that work in this dress. It was not just me. I did the main body of the garment, but then several friends, my sister, my nieces, lots of friends just came over and helped finishing, like did the embellishment. And quinceañera is a special event that girls in Latin America have when they turn 15, and you know, you have the big ball gown, and the dress that my daughter wanted, it had all these three-dimensional flowers that were made out of fabric. So we made handmade 150 flowers and then sewed them into the dress. So it was this very massive dress, and it was heavy, and so it took a lot of hours of work to finish it. And we still have it, and we're probably never gonna get rid of it because it's so spectacular and so special. But that's been probably one of my recent favorite pieces. And a lot of the flowers were just leftover fabric that I had from different projects, and lace that was sitting around, and so we did repurpose a lot of material for that dress too. And I think I answered the last question by Sally. Did any of you ever been to a fashion show, or what's been your experience in the fashion industry? Anybody want to answer that? Because I often hear people that, you know, have been enjoying fashion but from a distance, but never really been like directly involved or actively involved with it. And I always wondered, like, how many people ever attended a fashion show around here? Like, we have done a lot over the years, but I know that so many people just never had that experience.
Well, I'm going to jump in because, of course, I've attended all of your fashion shows and participated. But I think you really stretch the envelope or the definition of what a fashion show is. I don't think there are any fashion shows like what you do. And I'm trying to figure out how to let people know about the whole activist aspect of your fashion show, the whole community involvement of what you do, and the whole valuing of who the people are that participate at whatever level they are. It's like you don't have this criteria that people have to do things a certain way. So I think your fashion shows are really unique, and I personally want to find out how, to let more people know that this is just not your ordinary fashion show, and it's absolutely necessary to your community, like everything that you're saying. That's my mission.
You do a pretty good job on that. I mean, you do so much writing about it, and always even helping me edit some of my writing. That's really helpful, because I have all these ideas, but I'm a terrible speller, and my grammar is terrible. I always also translating everything to Spanish, and sometimes the translations are not precise, and I get distracted and forget about it and don't correct them. So you've always been so supportive, and I definitely have tried to put the activist aspect of it forward as much as I can. But it's at the same time, it's kind of tricky, because the people that you want to engage with sometimes can be turned off by this whole idea of activism, and then you lose them and never get engaged. So there is always this thin line to be crossing between what the fantasy of fashion is and what the importance of educating people is. So I tried, and we tried to kind of put both together. It's definitely extremely challenging and fragile, and sometimes maybe we miss the line. But at the same time, I just don't want people to think of, okay, we're gonna do this show and just hear about these terrible things about the industry. You know what I mean? Because I know, that life itself is not easy, and, people want to be entertained, but at the same time, I do want this to keep going. And the only way they keep going is if there's more serious and substantial support for it. Because as we've been doing shows for so many years, I mean, we just struggle financially to be able to put together a show that is, a certain quality, because it's hard to find sponsors, it's hard to get funding from institutions. So it's definitely something that we need more support from people who care and they're committed to create change in our community and to work together, so we can have more shows and have more fun, and we don't even have to think about all the ugliness of the industry, because it will be gone. So if we can work towards all of that bad side to minimize it, or totally make it go away, we can just have really cool shows. Because definitely the talent, I keep saying it, talent is here. I'm just always impressed. And the reason why I'd like for people who are just starting it to participate is because that was me several years ago when I first moved here, tried to get involved with local organizations, and people wouldn't even consider to have a garment and display at a gallery. It was just no, that's not what we do. And that's why we went on and to start my own thing, because it's pretty much the dilemma that if you want something to happen, you gotta go and do it yourself, because just waiting around expecting people just to let you in, and it happens at times, but considering that I'm a Black person, an immigrant, that definitely has been a challenge to be able to make a dent in the local art and culture. But I always find the way, we have people power, and we always are able to pull through, definitely.
So that's an interesting point. So the fashion people, we can't tell them it's activist. And the activist people, we can't tell them it's fashion. And the business people, we have to tell them how they're going to make money. So it's like three scripts.
It is. It is definitely, yeah, it is fun. It's definitely fun. You definitely need a lot of creativity to go around all of that.
Well, can I ask one last question, which I think everybody always wonders? I've seen shows of yours and work of yours done with professional models, but I've also seen a lot of your work modeled by local community members. And we had a comment in the chat. Evan, one of our wonderful employees of UK Health Corps, I think, is offering to wheelie his bike down the runway for you, do a little stunt riding as a model. And after you did that ANS fashion show, and the students that didn't walk in it said, wait a minute, I didn't realize this is like a real fashion show. We were going to walk in a real fashion show, and they wanted to know, like, how can we all get involved in, doing set design for you, or walking in your shows, or even collaborating on projects in some other way.
Well, the way that we've been doing the recruiting for years is very easy. Basically, we will get together. I put out an ad or send it to people, send an email to people. Hey, we're gonna get together. We're planning this event. Just come over. Whatever skill, whatever talent that you have, just bring it over. And for the last event that we were having this event once a month, they call Art and Focus. And so we will come together and just go through what was the plan for the show, what we're needing. I will present like how much fundraiser I have done and what needed to be done and all those things. And it is really very easy, transparent. There's just not so much like fill out this 3-page application or pay this fee or anything. You just say, hey, I want to help. I'm here. This is what I can do. And boom, you're in. It's that simple. It really is. And I think because it's usually so simple, people think, oh, this is not legit. This is not going to be that great, because it's like, it's going to be as good as how much you invest on it. Okay. So if you want a really raw, awesome show, you got to come and bring it all. Just do what you can and do your best. And then it's going to be awesome. And so I think with the people that usually stick around, I mean, they deliver. Every time, it's just so exciting. And it usually, like, not all the shows go, it's like, I had it in my head, like I planned it, but I'm flexible. So it's like, oh, that didn't work out. That's totally cool. Totally fine. It's not the end of the world. The audience doesn't know. They had a great time. They enjoy what they saw. And now they're interested and they're going to go and tell some other people. So that's how we build up our network. And it really is quite big. Like, there is so many people that have coming in with ideas and just to enjoy the show, because people do like clothes and they enjoy clothes and they want to be able to enjoy it more and have people around them that also do. And there's no judging. Like, I don't say don't buy clothes and just know you can still purchase garment, because we need people to be purchasing garments to maintain it, but to be more conscious about it, and also buy items that you really love, and then figure out what is the works best for you. It makes you happy, and not compromising just by the pressure that the industry puts on people, just buying stuff without any thought. So be thoughtful about it. And if you need help, there's so many people who are really great stylists who can put things beautifully, together beautifully, that you can ask. And so it's about creating a community that support creativity and support originality. It's really easy as just showing up.
Well, we do have time for one more question. Our dean, Laura Bryan, asks if you have a favorite material.
Oh yeah, I saw that. There is a fabric that I really love to work with, and haven't done a lot with it because it's a little expensive, but it's a blend of hemp and silk. And I have made about 3 different garments out of it. And it is just so luxurious and beautiful, and just has a great texture. And I made a dress a couple of years, or last year, that we used for the promotion of Future of Fashion, and I hand dye it. And the dye, it takes the dye so beautifully, because it has the silk that gives it that pop, and then the weight and the texture of the hemp. The fabric, it really look like a sculpture. And I have that in the cover of my website. It's a brown dress, and my daughter's wearing it. And she has this big headpiece that my friend Josh Samples made for that photo shoot. And I wanted to work more with that fabric eventually. Like, if I ever go back and put together a full collection or something, I would love to work with that fabric. And hopefully will be, eventually locally produced, because it is, the majority of it is hemp. I believe it's like 75%, 25 or something like that, but it's mainly hemp. It's really beautiful. So you can check out on the websites there.
Well, you're making such a good pitch for everyone to support our hemp legislation in Kentucky, and I do appreciate that. And just thank you so much for doing this event with us and giving us all new things to think about. And we'll definitely make sure that we keep the Lewis community abreast about all your shows and all of your other work so that people can absolutely get involved. Thank you so
Well,
much
thank
for
you
being
so
here.
much for the opportunity. I always appreciative of being able to share my story, share some of the work that we're doing here, and get people excited about being involved, because there's a lot to do. And after this pandemic, we're gonna get back up there full force. And so we're gonna need everybody to join. And you all take good care, okay? We want all to be around and enjoy all this beauty that exists in this world.
Well, thank you. And we'll be uploading this recording to the Lewis YouTube and the Lewis Facebook later. So share it with your friends and family. Thanks again to Soreyda, and thank you to all of you for showing up. Join us for the next communities. We will be publicizing that sometime in the future.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. Stay warm.